What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Medium. I am Josh Hayes here with Scott Moon. We fired the intern. I'm just going to say it. I'm just coming out and saying it right now. We fired the intern. We let him go. We gave him a great severance package.
So was that like 80% of his pay for the next?
It was like 80% plus like some sick time that he had saved up.
So 100 years before the mast.
Yeah.
We watched Pirates of the Caribbean 2 last night because for some reason we're on that kick. My kids are.
So you have heard of me. So I know that's from the first one, but
100 years before the mast.
No, we didn't fire Chuck. Just kidding. He's off doing Chuck things and dad things, and he couldn't make it. So we love you, Chuck. As Clifton said, Jay Clifton says, yes, it's the OG crew. That's right.
There you go.
Going back to our roots. This is actually interesting because we were going back to our roots, but this is like really close to the time that we launched Keystroke Medium 7 years ago, which
Very
is coincidentally, we just went to OWFI.
I'll say that 3 times fast.
OWFI this last weekend. And the last time we went to that conference, we had just started Keystroke Medium, literally just started it. So it's interesting that now it's an OG crew again today. And we're kind of like going back in time. Like it's like a full circle.
I don't want to go back there. I mean, sure it was.
Let's redo the first episode.
Sure it was pre-2020, but
right.
I don't want to do the last 8 years over or whatever.
Chuck Things of Valor. That's true. Chuck Things of Valor is what he's doing.
Yep. He's on an extended deep cover mission for Keystroke Medium.
Deep top men. Every time I see that scene, that guy's lips like smacked it top men from Indiana Jones. Let's see. Tom Hoddle had the first comment of the day. Welcome. And he gets the golf clap of appreciation. Thanks, Tom. I don't see Rick anywhere in the chat. Somebody please call Rick and find. Oh, you know what? Rick is in Yellowstone. He probably doesn't even have no signal right now. He's chasing a buffalo, probably.
Or being chased by a buffalo. One of my favorite kid movies, horror movies, that I can barely remember anything about it had Charles Bronson in it. It was like called The Great White Buffalo. And all I remember is this big frozen buffalo head kind of always chasing him off screen. And
yes,
I'm sure the special effects were good if I could go back and see that again.
Oh, they definitely were.
Yeah.
Let's see. Unity 151 is here. Hello, Trucker Charlie. Where is he? He is riding the couch today, staying out of this triple-digit heat.
Ooh,
this is like the first time in Keystroke history where Trucker Charlie is not in a truck. You're gonna have to change your name. Let's see who else is here. I saw Tom H is here. The other Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Scott McGlasson is here, as usual. Deb Osorio. Osorio.
Deb Osorio.
Did I say that correctly? I think this might be one of her first chats in Keystroke chat. Welcome. Guy is here. What? Hello and welcome. He's been very quiet recently. Corey Gillum is here. Hello, Corey. Welcome.
If you read back far enough in the chat, Guy says that him and David Lee Roth, the only people that are banned from some mall in New York. So
how do you get banned from a mall?
I don't know. Ask David Lee Roth or Guy DeMarco.
Okay, Guy, how do you get banned from a mall? We'll talk about our updates here in a bit. Actually, let's do it now because then we can roll into you got it. Oh, sorry. Oh, I love that. Listen, if you're gonna make me say your name, do it like this every time. Like that's how I want to. Like if you have a weird spelling name, that's how I want you to do it. Put real words into it.
It sounds ridiculous, but I have to explain how to say my name almost every single time I tell anybody my name in public.
It's obviously Scoot Moonay. It says it sounds just like it's spelled.
Yep. They mostly think I'm joking or having a joke on them, I think, or something.
Because no one has the last name of Moon.
No one does. That's kind of like, is your refrigerator running? One of those things, some sort of thing. Like trying to get somebody to, you better go stop it.
Better go get it. Kayleen's here. Hey. Okay, let's do our updates real quick, and then we can talk about a whole bunch of other stuff. Ready? You go first.
Probably that was an easy one to see coming since there's only 2 of us today.
Let's see who's gonna. Let's paper rock scissors, like paper rock scissors shoot it.
Ready?
Okay, go. Okay, you go. You go. Yeah, you go.
Cheating going on KSC.
Yeah.
With the
whoops.
paper rock scissors.
Yeah.
So
lag on my end.
Yeah, there you go. That'd be perfect. That'd be my superpower. Yesterday, the Fall of the Reaper did launch. It's doing fairly good. I'm very happy with it. I always love when a Reaper launches. Let me check it real quick. Because like when you launch a book, you never like check the ranking like every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Let's
And
see.
then you're like tapping on the computer, like, hello, computer.
Come on,
And
do
you're
something good. Anyway,
Yeah.
so that's very happy. I'm very glad to see that. I'm doing very well on the Reaper 15. It's right. The words are coming really well, but I'm not nearly as far through the outline as I thought, which hopefully is a good thing. I think I want the last book in that series to be a big, robust book that people can really chew into, and hopefully has a lot of enough resolutions and payoffs to make everybody happy, because it is going to be the last one.
How does it feel writing the last book in a 15? I mean, you've been writing. Let's see. When did you first publish the
February
first book?
2019, I think, is when I published the first one, but I obviously started writing it before that. So
Wow.
that's 15 books. They're about, well, the early ones were a little bit shorter, so I guess we could probably average them to like 80, 90,000 a piece. It's a lot
Right.
of words. A lot of words, lots of characters, lots of mayhem and shenanigans and whatnot. It's somebody leaving for work there.
Bye.
Stuff. Yeah. All right. Enjoy. Have fun.
Man,
Dave's
15,
probably chasing
15 books in 2 years? And that's just on the one series. So you wrote a whole bunch of other books too while you were writing.
During that same time, I wrote 4 books in my Alien Invasion series. I think I was finishing up some stuff for Richard Fox. When I first started that, I wrote the Brothers in Arms trilogy for Aethon, which is out in a book bundle right now, by the way, if you want to get it for 99 cents.
Nice.
Brothers in Arms. Yeah, rock, paper, blast, paper, rock, blaster. There you go.
I'm so down with Paper Rock Blaster.
Why do you always choose blaster?
I'll put the link to Reaper 14 in the live chat. If Ken's watching later, drop that in the show notes for Scott.
Fantastic. So very happy about that. I have, which leads us to, I'm obviously, Jeff Chaney and I have ideas for the next series, and we've been working on it back and forth for probably almost a year, but I've made about 5 false starts on it, and I liked all of them, but I think the one I'm working on now is really what I need to do. I really enjoy it. It's like I do my kind of responsible writing first, and then my passion projects, and that falls into this because it's new. And so yesterday I couldn't stop working on it. So obviously I think I finally hooked into something that really sounds the clarion alarm or whatever. So,
when you say you do the responsible writing first and then do the other writing second, the mental image I got was you just sitting all proper at like writing the first book, like doom, 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 and then the second one you're like maniacally laughing, like and like pounding the keyboards as you're writing.
Pretty much correct. Running around acting out scenes and shit in the apartment. So that's writing stuff's good. I'm also working on 3 or 4 other projects. Obviously, that apartment's still going fairly well. They just that direction. Of course, you can't see that way. They've opened the pool, which is going to cause the dog to bark a lot during my nap time. I'm just saying it.
Mavis doesn't bark.
No, people have never met Mavis.
Very calm dog.
Yeah, doing that. Kids Josh and I went to speak at the OWFI conference, of course. While we were doing that, my family went and toured the new schools for the kids, and they are fantastic. So they're very excited about that. That's about it for me. Same thing, writing, pushing on, hoping to be a good summer. Talking about, because I've told a few people, I guess, that I really want to retire and go full-time writing in January 2023. So that's coming up very quickly from when I set the goal.
Super quick.
Like that'll be, that's going to be here before we know it. So I have to start really being ready for it and doing all the fun things and the practical things, and just kind of get ready so I can hopefully do it successfully. That's about it here.
Very cool. I've been slacking on my reading this month, and I just realized that I really need to jump back into it. And I've read, I don't know, like 15 or 20 books since the beginning of the year, and I need to stay on target.
Pascal's book last week, I think, and really enjoyed it. And I'm reading Rachel Akas's book right now, and also really enjoying that.
Against All Odds and Space Junk.
Mm-hmm. Definitely recommend both of those.
I've read. I'm like halfway through his second Grimm's War book right now, and then I had to stop to read The City Who Fought, which is a Anne McCaffrey book from the early '90s. Baen is reprinting it, so I'm doing the read so I can interview on it. And then I started reading the Thrawn trilogy again. I picked up the paperbacks from Target the other day, and it's interesting. I listened to the audiobooks way back in the day when the audiobooks were like cassettes or like multiple CDs, and it had like sound effects and stuff. But I didn't remember that they jump really quickly through scenes. There's no bridging at all. Yeah.
I find that done correctly. Maybe that could be okay. Do you think it works for them the way they do it, or something else?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it works because it's a Star Wars book. For instance, what I mean is, they're on Coruscant and they're talking about going to this planet, and obviously there's hundreds of thousands of planets in the Star Wars universe and thousands of light years, and they have to travel all these distances. And I'm basically when they're talking about going to this planet, I'm envisioning, okay, so we're gonna have like 1 or 2 chapters of travel basically between the two things, right. And they don't. It starts the very next chapter, they're landing on the planet. So they skipped all of the bridge work that I normally have in my stories. Yeah. So I'm wondering, maybe you could just drop all the bridges if it works.
In some stories, that would be great, because some stories the travel is part of the challenge. But I've had lots of stories I've written where I'm like, I just want to get there. Right. trying to make it entertaining all the way.
Right. Okay, so let's see. I'm working on Weaponized. I've got about 80,000 words on Weaponized. I'm aiming for about 105 to 110. So I'm pretty close to the ending of that. I'm working on some chapters on Tranquility 3. I've got situations and stuff going on with that book I can't really talk about right now, but hopefully here soon I'll be able to talk about. But that project is going fine. I am working on some chapters this morning for it, and then tomorrow I'll be doing some more on that book, and hopefully here in the next couple of weeks we'll have some big news on that project that I can talk about. I'm writing a short story in Jeff Haskell's Grimm universe. That's hopefully, if I can get it done, will be it'll be like bonus content for book 3 when it releases. At least the ebook, probably not the audio, but at least the ebook. And it'll follow the Jennings character of his main story, and it's basically going to be her first mission as a Marine. So that's pretty fun. And I'm redoing the Keystroke Medium intro video right now. And hopefully I'm going to have it done today or tomorrow. So that means next week we might have a new intro video on the YouTube channel. That means
that you should cherish this show forever, because this is maybe the last one you see this intro on.
That's right. We'll just play it over and over and over again and make the YouTube algorithms happy.
Yeah.
All right, so that's been pretty much all I had going on. We went to OWFI this weekend, and it was really great. They were superb. The con is a relatively smaller con. Does not compare to 20 books in terms of size. Mm-hmm. I think when we went to the last 20 books, there was like 2,000 or 3,000 people there. I'm not really sure on the number from last year. Whereas in this conference there was 200. We had 4 panels that we presented. We presented writing and law enforcement, writing military science fiction, boosting productivity, and podcasting. All the panels were exceptional. We had a packed house for the writing law enforcement panel. Yep. And we could not answer all the questions. I mean, what I mean is we ran out of time. And so we pitched to the organizer for next year to do basically 2 back-to-back panels where we do our talk and some question and answer, and then just have a straight question and answer right after that. And I think that will probably give us enough time to get people's questions answered. The podcasting one was super fun. The boosting productivity was fun. And then when Scott said, I wrote 42 novels, like the eyes of everybody were just like, holy crap.
It was like slapping people around. I was like, they're like, oh, what just happened?
Yeah.
Why are you saying those mean things to me? Write that many books.
And then the Mill Sci-Fi one actually was the least attended, or the smallest audience.
Also,
but I thought it was
one of the last day.
Yeah, it was the last panel of the last day of the conference. But I thought there was like we've talked about before on the show, where we have guests that aren't super comfortable talking, and then about halfway through, 40 minutes through the show, they just don't stop. That's kind of what happened for the Mill Sci-Fi panel. It was really really slow in the beginning, and then once we got through it to the end, everybody started asking questions, and there was big conversations, and it went really well. So we had a good time. One of the things we wanted to talk about today is, while we were down there, we decided to go see the Northman, which was our backup choice because Scott wanted to go see Doctor Strange, but I knew that my wife would want to also see Doctor Strange. And if I saw Doctor Strange, and this is really the only reason why, out of all the Marvel MCU movies, she likes the Doctor Strange one the best. Like, that's one of her favorite movies. So when she found out number 2 was coming, she was like, oh, I want to go watch it. Well, then Scott said, yeah, let's go do it. And I said, well, pump your brakes, because if I go watch it without Jamie, she'd probably, I don't know, be violent. and she definitely wouldn't talk to me for a while. So we went and saw the Northman, which is a very interesting movie, and we talked about it a lot. It's one of those movies where you don't leave the movie theater excited, and you don't feel that. We left the movie theater going, what? Yeah. How do we even talk about this?
My first thing, as soon as we stood up, I was like, I have thoughts.
I have thoughts. And we're going to try to talk about it a little bit today without spoilers, but if we happen to talk about spoilers, we'll kind of try to warn you ahead of time. There's not really much to spoil in this movie because it's pretty straightforward. It is a pretty straightforward story. There's a single, what we would call a twist in the story that happens about, I don't know, 70% of the way through the movie.
They decide not to use.
And it doesn't really affect anything.
It's a discarded plot twist.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I'm gonna segue for a second. Yesterday, since I got the dog here,
yes,
I was
the puppy of valor.
Yeah, puppy of valor. She's gonna be the base fighting puppy of valor in a second. So I look over here. I have my electric bass sitting by my computer because I've been playing it a little bit. I look over and she's chewing on my strap, and I've suspected her of doing that before. She's not much of a chewer, but I look over there and I'm like, "Hey, get away from that!" Well, but then she doesn't. And I'm like, you little bastard. Well, she's backing up and she's dragging the base across the floor.
Yes.
Like, she has that. Are her jaws that powerful? This base is like 5 times her size. And she's just it's hooked. The stand had hooked in her collar. And so she was stuck on it. And
nice.
Panicking and dragging the base around the room. So I ran over there and detached her. I felt so bad.
Scott says it's the North dog. Yes, true.
This dog would not have lasted long in the Northman universe. I'm just going to say that.
Tom says he's looking forward to seeing it. Look, I definitely recommend people to see the movie. It was a, how do I say this? It was a fantastic film that I did not enjoy watching.
Right. Great film that is
the story was not your typical Western story. The cinematography was not your typical Western cinematography. And this director actually has a history of being very Yeah, neither was the music. This director directed The Lighthouse and The Witch. Both were horror, and both were very stylized. And I've heard several people talk about The Lighthouse as one of the best horror movies they've ever watched, or of the last like decade. And I haven't watched it yet because I'm not super into horror, but I probably will after watching this, The Northman.
The Northman reminds me as if they got in a time machine and they went back to pre-Judeo-Christian storytelling and hired a guy to write the screenplay. And then he wrote the movie, and then they brought it back here, and then they made this, 2,000-year-old movie based on myths and legend.
And that's the thing. It's very authentic. It's a very authentic movie that doesn't feel like it was just painted in the veneer of a Viking landscape, but told a modern story. This was not a modern story.
That's probably why it was hard to digest, because it was not a modern story. And so one of the things that I think, and the reason I wanted to like it, but there were some things, my biggest gripe about it was the character didn't really make any decisions, because he's just sticking to his destiny, which was the point of the story. And that's, I think for a modern reader or viewer, you want your main characters to like cleverly figure something out or overcome something through courage and a tough decision. This is just this guy just putting his head down and suffering through to the end. Right. And so that was one part of it.
Yeah. Like I said, it was a fantastic film that I didn't enjoy watching, and that's because it was very brutal, but also the sound design was, I think, it purposely designed to make you uncomfortable the entire time. It was not a beautiful sweeping soundtrack like Hans Zimmer, and you're like, oh, I love this music. I felt like I was cringing the entire time.
Well, and they played it on the authentic instruments available at the time, like a pipe and two drums that were just skins over circles.
Well, and Thomas, it's a based on a true story or 1,000-year-old myth, at least. Yes. And that's the thing, like when you watch it, there are certain scenes that are presented as, yes, this is happening, and then other scenes that are presented as this is kind of a psychedelic trip almost.
It's fantastical kind of.
Right. But then they're blended together, and sometimes you don't know which are the hallucinations and which are the real ones. And there was one scene in particular where, so part of the story is him getting this sword, this ancient powerful sword that he has to use to kill his uncle, and he
goes into
finds a location from a witch doctor, and he goes into this tomb, and he fights this undead warrior.
It's like an undead giant.
Yeah,
kind of.
And it was a great scene, and it was a great fight, and it was shot well, and the fight was great. And then the fight's over, he wins, and then the camera, he wins, and he's like standing there like breathing heavy, and the camera does this slide pan away where he goes out of shot, and then it goes back to him standing in front. So he comes down there.
Yeah,
and,
the scene
this isn't really a spoiler, but he comes down into the thing, and he walks up to this throne where this dead guy is sitting, and he's holding the sword in his hand. And then the dead guy gets up, they have a fight, and when he's kind of recovering, the camera pans off of him and then goes back to a side view of him standing in front of the throne again, and the skeleton is sitting there, and he picks up the sword and the skeleton falls over. So it was very it didn't, in his mind it happened, but it obviously didn't happen for real. But then there are other things that were mystically thematically happening in the movie that you're like, okay, this is just happening in his head, but no, they actually happened. And Guy says compared to 13th Warrior. So we actually did talk about this. And 13th Warrior, this movie was much more brutal and a representative of the time frame that it was trying to portray.
So we talked about that. So the 13th Warrior, they like showed kind of the primitive brutality through a couple of scenes that didn't make you want to stop watching the movie. And I thought it was done better. Like there's a whole scene where they're all washing their hands and blowing their nose and drinking out of the same bowl, and you're like, yeah, this is not my backyard Viking stuff here. This is pretty. That's that's pretty dirty and gross and harsh. But the scenes in they show the brutality in the Northman so thoroughly that you're like, they probably didn't need to show it that much.
Yeah.
And it would have been a better story without. It's like, hey, I'm glad you did this research and you can show some of the brutal shit they did back in the 9th century, but maybe you didn't need to show it to make this story work.
Yeah, it's like the scene in the 13th Warrior where they fight the king's son, like they piss him off on purpose and then fight him to show that they're, you know, intelligent and smart and not just stupid warriors, and they kill his son. And you're like, man, that sucks, but whatever, it's a brutal time, that's what happens. Well, in the Northman, there was a scene probably at the 30-40 minute mark where they're sacking this town, and they're just doing some stuff that I'm like, and they don't explicitly show anything, but you can tell by the context of everything that's happening in the background, you can tell what's happening. And I'm like, man, I don't know if I want to watch this. I really don't. Yeah. But that being said, we did finish the movie.
And, you know, in a modern show, and it's not necessarily accurate historically, but you know, he makes no effort to help ease anybody's misery or fear or anything after he does his part in taking this. He just sits there and lets all these horrible things happen and goes on about his business. And he makes him very unheroic.
He's like the epitome of an anti-hero in this story. And I thought that there's a place at the end, and again, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but there's a scene at the end, right at where there's 20 minutes left in the movie, where it's basically an intersection of choices that this guy makes, and it's really the only choice that he makes in the whole movie. And if he would have made a different choice, it would have made the movie so much better. If they would have ended it on, because what they did is the whole movie is they're trying to subvert your expectation about what he's doing and what's happening. And there, like I said, there are some twists that make his decisions, they paint them in a different light. And actually, we watched a video that the Critical Drinker did on this movie, and I thought it was spot on, because it talks about how perception as a child is different from what is actually happening in reality. And they use that perception as a basis for this guy's entire belief of life. Like his entire outlook on what he's going to do with his life is based on a perception he made as a child. And that really paints if you go back and look at it that way, it really paints the movie in a different light. But then he's faced with a choice near the end of the movie. And if he would made a different choice, it would have made the movie so much better. And his choice carries so much weight that he's making this different decision. Maybe here in a couple of weeks or in a couple of months, we'll come back and talk about that choice, because like I said, I don't want to spoil it, because that in itself is not a spoiler, but I don't want to ruin the experience for somebody else going and watching it. But if you are going to watch it, just know that you're probably not going to enjoy it. It's a good experience to have, and it's a good cinematic event to watch, but it is not enjoyable. I won't watch it again. I know that for sure.
No. When I first saw him, I might watch it a couple of times and really dig out all the story nuggets and visuals and use it to inspire some other type of writing. But I'm like, nah, probably not. I think I've seen enough. And I do tend to gravitate towards the much darker styles of fantasy, and like if you the Bernard Cornwell has The Kingdom or whatever it's called now, the movie series on his books, and you read his books are extremely brutal and unforgiving, and they show how cheap life was back then. but the movie was just a whole different experience. So,
Jay, how you doing, man? We're talking about the Northman, a new movie with what's his name? Skarsgård. I can't remember his first name. Choice of Valor. That's true. He had a choice of valor. In my opinion, he chose the wrong one.
Yeah, you chose poorly.
I tell you what, though, comparing it to the 13th Warrior, the 13th Warrior, in my opinion, is one of the best movies of all time. If you've never seen it, like, I absolutely love that movie.
It didn't get anywhere near the type of props it should have got. It was a great movie. I loved it.
Jay says, when you write shields and swords, brutality is a fact. And that's very true. Yeah. One of the interesting thing about my thoughts of this movie is they are not related to the violence or the brutality of the violence of the movie. There was, for instance, the thing that I disliked in the first 40 minutes, there's a scene after they sack this town where they're putting all these kids into this building, and then they light the building on fire.
And it's happening.
And you could see what's happening. And the thing is they're focusing on the main character, and all of this stuff is happening in the background. And they're carrying these women off to do things to them, and then they have these kids lined up outside this building, and they're just pushing them into this building, and you can see what's happening, and you're like, I don't like that. Like in my soul, I don't like that. So I think that they could have showed the brutality of the time without doing that. But again, that's subjective on my part. There's other people that might not like bother on that kind of a level. Not that you're a horrible person for
and you have to throw it in there too, that so you tell that story, you described the scene, because I was going to describe the same one as to what was really kind of the point where I was like, that's almost too much. I think I'm gonna have to tap out.
Right.
But it's not just that, it's the way it was shot, because the cinematics and the visuals and the sound was enormously powerful. And so when you say that scene was there, it's not just like something casual like that. It was set up to punch you the heck out. So.
Yeah. Whew.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's talk about.
Interesting, because the movie was depressing in and of itself, and then when you talk about the movie, it also is depressing when you talk about the movie.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have gone and seen Doctor Strange 2, and then I just dealt with Jamie's wrath after the fact.
Right. Yeah. You could use a time travel to get back and tell you didn't watch it or something.
There's some people there's some split opinions on Doctor Strange. I see where it's a lot of people are, this is the best Marvel movie of all time, and then this is really I don't like it. Leo says Vikings wouldn't kill children to destroy a village; they would sell them into slavery. To them, that was the ultimate destruction of the bloodline.
Well, they did sell them children into slavery, but these were like kids, I think, that were too small to really effectively transport as slaves and care for, and they would have been more of an expense than something they could sell easily. That's what I think the scene was about.
Yeah, probably. But that, like I said, that was something that they never really touched on. It was just happening in the background of the movie. Let's see. Lisa's here. Oh my God, Scott, you're drinking coffee when it's 162 degrees outside?
Yes, of course. Absolutely.
I'm so excited for the nice weather. I'm getting the boat out of storage tomorrow, and I'm taking it out on the water on Wednesday, and I'm super excited about that. I might have to take my laptop and do some writing on the water.
There you go.
No, needed kindling. Guy, come on now. That's horrible. Slightly hilarious.
Slightly hilarious. There was also a lot of naked combat in there. I'm just throwing that out there. Or semi-naked combat.
Yeah. Listen, I definitely recommend anybody to see it. But just know what you're getting in for when you go see it, because it's not your typical movie.
Lots of barking like animals and growling like animals and running around like animals.
That was such a weird scene.
Yeah.
Hey, Brid's here. What's up? Let loot carry loot unless they're too small, then just burn them. Yeah, exactly. 100% is basically what it is.
Yeah.
Leo says hot coffee makes a hot day bearable. Have you ever went through a hot day with zero coffee? Pure hell.
Oh yeah. There's always a way to get around. I mean, like I figure it's like this. I guess I'll just stop talking while my dog barks at my neighbors.
Get him, Mavis. Get him. They're in your parking lot.
Yeah, there you go. But she's not even barking at the ones that walk by in the back. I'm looking this way towards the people, and she's looking that way. That's crazy. You can see that. Well, I hope she jumps off that chair while we're here, because you'll see the chair go all cattywampus while she's running around. Oh my God.
Let's see. We talked about that for a while while we were down there, and we had some pretty good dinners while we were down there. The cool thing that I thought about these panels that we were doing this last weekend is you get a lot of cool interaction from the people that are there trying to write different stories. And so, like, when we think about writing law enforcement, we're thinking of like specific things, but then these other audience members that were there, or the conference attendees that were there, were asking some really cool, interesting questions that I would not have thought to answer. And one of the guys, he was like, I'm writing this big scene in this mall, and there's this basically a flash robbery that happens, a flash mob robbery that happens. And he was asking about like responses and what they would do here. And we had a really good discussion about what the first officers would do, what would the second several responding officers would do, what would the criminals do. And you could see in his mind him working through the variables of this really complex scene that he was trying to wrap his head around, and the answers that we were able to kind of really quickly give him just based on our own experience were helping him like lock things in and giving him the opportunity to see how he was going to structure that in this story. And that was super fun.
Yep. People had a lot of specific questions, and I don't know if I think you probably did too, but so I say we, but I know I got stopped like probably 5 or 6 different times by people with either, thanking us for the presentation or asking a further question or so on and so forth. So people really like that. So we may have to do that one again.
Yeah. I talked about the idea of having like a cop centric question and answer show, but I feel like sometimes we talk about that kind of stuff a lot, so maybe I'll just put a couple of polls up in the group and see what people want to talk about this week. Well,
and also everybody that came in that room was writing police fiction,
right?
So had specific stuff, so that may not be what y'all are into right now. So let us know what you think.
Let's see. What else do we want to talk about? We didn't have a whole lot planned today because we got off kind of a crazy weekend and we didn't get to really plan out anything. You are full of truth today. Who is Leo? If you're better to talk about me. Tom says he could use a show like that. Tom, what are your specific? You have any questions about cop stuff? Throw them out there, man. We'll talk about them.
We'll do a test run.
Guy says, I hope you two gave out KSM business cards with info about the shows. You know what's interesting about that? Is I had a whole box. Now, the last like 2 shows, I was like throwing business cards all over the place.
Everybody.
But I forgot for the first 2 shows. So we pitched to the people that were coming there. We pitched to KSM to come and hang out. So hopefully it did. He says, I've already given Scott a list. Tom said that. He gave you a list?
He gave me a list, but I think I responded to it. I'll have to go find the list.
You and Scott are always speaking truth. Hurts my feelings when I send you nudes. Leo.
That's mostly just what Mavis says, and then we translate it into human speech.
Deb says, it boggles my mind how you're able to juggle multiple projects simultaneously. That's one of the things that sometimes I like doing, and other times I'm like, I really don't want to juggle these projects anymore.
Yeah. Sometimes it's more of a need, because sometimes I'm stuck on one and it just feels good to move to another one.
Well, one of those things we mentioned, I can't remember, I think it was in the boosting productivity session we had, where we were talking about if you're starting to get writer's block or something similar to that experience, that sometimes it is really easy or better to move to a second project and work on that project. It's like when you're trying to come up with the answer, like who's that actor from that movie, and then you're like thinking about it, snapping your fingers like, I know who it is, but it's just not coming. and then you stop thinking about it, and like immediately the guy's name pops in your head, and you're like, aha, that's who it was. Kind of the same thing happens when I do multiple projects. I usually have one major project that I'm working on, and then the other one is like a side project, or like, for instance, the short story that I'm going to do for Jeff. I'm probably going to do that over a weekend, maybe a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'll like take a block of time and just write out that story, and get it done. The other thing, like Weaponized and Tranquility, are super similar. But because it's the last book in a trilogy on Tranquility, I know all the characters, I know what's happening, and I have to go. I think there's about 15 chapters I need to go and fill some stuff in on. And then hopefully I'll be moving on to Weaponized, and then after that I'm doing. I think everybody's gonna love this. I should have mentioned this is my update. So Weaponized is going to be a trilogy, and once I finish that, I will be jumping back into the Valor universe with a different trilogy.
Different trilogy of Valor. Holy
Yeah, the second trilogy of Valor of Doom. And so I think I'll be able to start writing that after the summertime. I'm hoping that I have Weaponized done over the summer, and then I will be able to jump in and start this new Valor trilogy, and that's going to be super exciting. I think, hopefully, will there be Weaponized T-shirts? I don't know. I don't even know that I have Valor. I've got Valor stickers. I don't know that I have Valor T-shirts. I should check that out. Let's say, what happens when you swear out a warrant? Are you actually swearing, or does the judge say this is all correct? Yeah, so when you're typing out a warrant, do what?
Yes and yes, because he does go through all the warrant, make sure everything's factual, ask you questions, and things like that. And if he doesn't think you have the probable causes, yeah, you don't have enough, go try again, and you got to go find more evidence. But once you're done, you at least back before we did everything digitally and over distance, that's a little more complicated. You had to go to their house at 3 a.m, and the judge and his family would usually make you breakfast. It's kind of a weird, surreal experience. And he'd read the warrant, and then he'd sit there and he'd ask you a couple of questions, and then he'd say, okay, looks good. And then you'd put your hand up, and then you'd swear to it, and then he'd stamp it with his judgely stamp and sign it. And you'd sign the 3 copies, and you take them off and execute them.
Well, and that's the thing. He's talking about there went my depiction of the older constipated judge archetype, because you mentioned the digital stuff. That's just our department. I mean, depending on the metropolitan or the organization or the policy that you have, you can have it done any way you want. Like you can still go. We go to the judge's house. Up until a couple of years ago, we would go straight to the judge's house, and you would. I remember going into this judge's house and standing in his foyer, and he's like in pajama pants and a t-shirt. And I'm like, man, this is crazy. And he goes and he reads through the warrant, and he, asks questions here and there, and then he signs it and gives it back to you, and you go and do your thing. So you most definitely can have that depiction of that judge in your book if that's the way you want to do it.
And so it's really interesting. So when you do those things, the other thing people, if we're talking about getting a search warrant, is one of the things that you probably are not going to get from your research is you have to do a warrant return. So after you're done, you have 10 days to bring them a list of what you seized in the search warrant, and put it, give it to the judge's clerk or to the judge herself, and some things like that. So, yeah.
Charlie says Thongs of Valor, a romance series. I'm not doing a romance series.
Yeah. That's could go wrong in so many different ways. Whatnot. But yeah, no, I'd like that the old way of doing it more, because now you have to send everything to the district attorney or assistant district attorney through like a secured email that everybody uses on both ends. They read them, they tell you whether you have enough or ask if you have to make changes. You fix everything to where it's all perfect. And when they agree, then you send it to the judge. And then if they agree, then you basically both digitally sign, and you have to have a notary someplace to notarize it. and then it makes it all official. Then you go forward and stuff. And it's just, they started doing that even before 2020, but they really knuckled down on it when everybody was on lockdown. It was basically the only way to get a search warrant.
Well, and one of the things that we mentioned in the panel too, and I think that everyone here can take as a piece of advice for your writing, whether you're doing law enforcement or anything else that has a real life, I lost the word, comparison, basically, is the need for realism and the need for cinematic effect or storytelling or drama, because the process of the actual process of getting a warrant could be really long and boring and arduous.
You could literally have a scene where you have to go find the judge at his tea time or in the middle of his golf thing and have to go up there and have him read it on his golf court and then sign it and give it back to you. And you could do all kinds of things you could do if you needed to show some sort of setting someplace. You could have him be at his kid's soccer game or almost any place.
Yeah, but I mean, like we were talking specifically about like DNA, like unless you have a really high profile case like, BTK or some other kind of serial killer or whatever, that DNA is not going to come back for weeks. If at all. And
the problem now
you've got to have
is we collect so much DNA. You think about every burglary we collect DNA on in the entire country. You're talking thousands and thousands of DNA submissions a day.
Yeah.
And so you don't just go, oh, I got it back. You got to wait until somebody can process that.
Yep. Look at your story, and if it makes sense dramatically and it is not incorrect, I always say go with that instead of trying to do it ultra realistically. And the other thing is too that almost all departments or municipalities or organizations, the process is always different. We mentioned that about 10 codes. The 10 codes in Wichita are different than the 10 codes of like 2 counties over, and they're not, the procedures aren't the same, and their chase procedures aren't the same. The chase procedures for the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office are different than the chase procedures for the Wichita Police Department, and they're in the same county. So
very few things will stay the same, like things around due process. Like you can only hold somebody 48 hours without formally charging them. It doesn't matter who you are. And so but where the nuance comes in is since you only have 48 hours, a lot of times you won't arrest somebody until you're pretty close to having a presentable case. If you don't have all your ducks in a row, you might not bring them in yet, but sometimes they get themselves arrested and then you have to respond. Like if it's something that happened and they were caught in the act, and you come in the next morning as a detective and you get what's called an in custody. So you have to process all of the evidential requirements, get everything done, interview all your people, do all your stuff, and have it ready to walk across the street to the DA's office, like within 48 hours. In addition to all the other paperwork you're doing, or other cases you're being assigned, or whatever else is happening.
Tom said, so have you ever walked away from a judge's Beamer as it explodes? No, I have not, but I have walked away from a Chevy Lumina before we blew it up, which is not the same thing. I know it's not what you're talking about, but for dramatic effect, it could have been.
Very epically.
Leo actually had a by accident a good point. I keep getting bumped out of the show. Is this a restraining order kicking in? Possibly. But the interesting thing about that is we're talking about procedures and policies being different in different municipalities and organizations. Restraining orders are also different in the way that they work, and also in the way in how they're even presented or what they're called. Like in Sedgwick County and Wichita, we technically don't have restraining orders. It is the effect is the same, but it's not called a restraining order. It's called a protective from abuse or a protective from stalking order. It's actually not called a restraining order. So if you go to Sedgwick County, so we can have a restraining order, technically they would say, well, we don't have restraining orders. We have a protective from abuse and a protection from.
They make things super complicated. There's also no contact orders, which are different things that happen automatically when you're arrested for certain things as a condition of your bond.
Right. But if I was writing, even if I was writing a fictionalized cop in Wichita doing something in Wichita, I probably would still use restraining order, not protect him from abuse, because it's general knowledge that what the restraining order means. I don't have to explain that in my story. A protection from abuse or a protection from stalking order, I might have to explain that. Now, it could be maybe a cool thing to have your detective or your officer explain that to the victim. But if you're just using the verbiage restraining order, the reader doesn't need to understand or doesn't need to read something further to know what that is. They're going to know what that is anyway. So just a little bit of info for you and your thing. I saw Jay talking about something. He says
most of the stuff in the live chat is unpresentable at this point. I'm just saying.
Jay says in Brazil many years ago, someone robbed a bus full of people, but the cops got there in time, and so it became a standoff. The criminal took a passenger hostage. Long story short, one of the cops shot the passenger trying to kill the criminal. It was made into a movie. I wonder how that would work in a fantasy setting. Maybe a guard killing a townsfolk. It could be and
you make a lot of trope assumptions, but I think you'd need to have more than a guard, like maybe a nobleman in charge of guards or a high constable or something, because anyway.
No, I mean, I think that would work. Put them on like a caravan or some confined space, like even inside the keep or inside a tavern or something like that. If you did it in a tavern where there wasn't that very many options to get out, I think that would work.
Yeah.
Brent says, do firefighters really destroy as much evidence as... You know what's a funny story about firefighters, Brent, and you being a firefighter might take offense to this or not. I really don't care. We used to stop firefighters from coming into our scenes, especially... So, for instance, one day we had a suicide call.
I like to litter fake evidence in front of them. They can break that for a while.
Yeah. We would stop our firefighters from coming. The crazy thing about being a cop is you as a cop cannot declare someone dead. Like you cannot as a cop say code black and have it carry any weight. It has to be an EMS person that comes in, because they're obviously more trained to see if someone with half their head missing after shooting themselves in the head is dead or not. But then all the firefighters want to get there with their big bags and like slam them down on the ground and walk around and move things around. So we had this call one time where it was back by this trailer in this trailer park, and it was back like it was a really kind of secluded area. And me and my partner found this old lady first, and she was obviously dead. There was no question at all whatsoever, but we still had to have EMS come and check her out. Well, we get there first and we hear the fire truck, and they pull up, and it's a ladder truck, and like 6 guys are getting out, and we're like, guys, we don't need you. Just don't come back here. Okay, go somewhere else. Go find a cat in a tree. We don't need you here. And so we like performed. We made a protective barrier around the scene so the firefighters couldn't get there. Yeah. And then we called. We just need one EMS guy. Just send me one. He doesn't need his bag. He doesn't need anything. He can just come in and see.
Yeah, and in Brent's defense, they're usually there for a different reason than us. And if there's any chance of, they usually are in there trying to save somebody's life, or a lot of times if somebody's in some sort of crisis, you have to move them, which just does terrible things to our scene. When you take the body and drag it from the bedroom to the living room, and we're like, was there a struggle? I don't know. All the couches are broken. Maybe there was a fight. But that's
to their credit. If somebody needs saving, then they're the guys you want because they're the people that are going to do CPR for like an hour and a half.
When I need crap broken, I call those guys. Or when I need somebody really heavy lifted, you know, like, can you send me can you start me fire so we can put this person on a gurney?
He said, "You're awesome." No, you're awesome, sir. Let's see. Kit says 4 writers in a mystery critique group writing homicide detective stories, but don't know any police procedure. They say it's okay because they're writing a cozy mystery. So that's interesting because we did talk about that in our law enforcement panel as a different way to include law enforcement or a different way to write it, depending on what kind of story you're telling, right? So if you're writing a police procedural like Bosch, then you have to know, or you should know, at least a little bit of police procedure, so that you're obviously so people aren't like confused, or they're not like this wouldn't happen in whatever. But if you're writing a cozy mystery and it's your main character is not a cop, like it's an Angela Lansbury or whatever, what this other Jessica, whoever. Yeah. And they're not a cop, but they're like an investigator, or they're helping, or they're a contractor, like Monk. Monk is a great example because Monk was not a cop, but he was an advisor, and he did a lot of cool stuff. And he didn't need to know, like watching Monk, you don't need to know like the specifics of police investigation to watch Monk work. And the same thing in your story.
You don't need to know that piece of bloody clothing has to be taken to the drying room and left there for 48 hours in a secured facility. Then you go check it out and resubmit it as evidence, because it doesn't matter. Right. But if you're writing a story where the procedures influence the plot, then yeah, you probably better know that stuff.
He's okay. So he says, but all I see is police interviewing suspects incompetently. Oh, well, so that's rough. And that's
really hard actually to write a good interview scene.
Yes.
To make it come off. That is actually a challenge, because I've done that and I know how to interview people, and it's hard to make those dramatic and really come out well.
Yeah, because the thing is, to write a really effective, so I can interview, and I know Scott can too, I can interview effectively and very well, but it takes a while. Like if you want a really good interview with a suspect, it's probably going to take you an hour to really build that rapport and get those questions that you want answered.
Like the whole movie.
And if you were going to write that scene, you're talking about like a 25,000 word scene minimum of just dialogue. And so writing that is very difficult because you have to condense. I mean, if you had a whole chapter of an interview, that would probably be good. But how long is the chapter? 2,500 words, 3,000 words. But if you're going to, 5,000 words, 10,000 words of an interview, that's a lot, and people are going to get bored, and you're going to have a lot of really back and forth question and answers that don't have anything to do with what you're wanting to get the suspect to talk about.
A lot of good interviewing is non-confrontational, because in the movies they're always yelling and screaming at each other or whatever, making accusations. Well,
a phone book and a light.
But in a real interview, you want them to be you think you're on the same side and tell you everything that they got in their deepest, darkest evil soul or whatever. And so it's more about getting along with them, even though you may despise what they've done and what they've done or something like that. And so it's not very good for dramatic writing, because it's not very confrontational when it's done really well. There's a moment of confrontation when you need to get a confession, but it's a little piece at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like Josh says, it might be 2-3 hours. Where I was assigned, I had interviews that would go up to 2 or 3 hours per interview, and I'd have like 12 people interview on a case. And it was very exhausting.
Yeah, so it's tough to do that kind of stuff well, because it's not all a few good men scene where it's like you can't handle the truth, because that doesn't work, and you don't get good confessions like that. You get people that shut down and don't answer questions.
Yeah.
Leo says, question: are police trained at detecting pathological liars?
Everybody's a liar.
Yeah.
Sorry, wait, what? Did I say that out loud?
Some are. Some there's a lot of training that detectives can go to specifically for interviewing people to detect what people are saying, whether it's the truth or not. There are specialists that can be trained in seeing the physiological effects of lying, and they can like point that out and do all that stuff. But that kind of stuff is very specialized. But I can tell you that just by working the street, like you pick up on people lying and it becomes almost second nature. For instance, when my kids lie, this is really a simplistic answer, but they lie and they're like, oh no, I'm telling the truth. And I'm like, I know you're lying. I absolutely 100% know you're lying. But criminals are the same way. They'll be like,
they lie. Yeah,
these aren't even my pants. And I'm like, come on, man.
That's a classic. These aren't my pants. Where'd you find? And then you're like, okay, well, tell me about your pants. Where'd you get those? Well, I was at a random person's house who I don't know their name, and I just saw some pants and decided to put them on. And so you write that down in the report and see if the jury buys it.
Yeah.
But a lot of lies are really easy to detect. And a lot of times, especially on a major case, so if the detective goes in to interview the suspect, at least the way we do it, is they've probably interviewed every single possible witness first, and they already know the story. And so it's really hard to lie when we literally know everything and have watched nowadays everything is on video because everybody's door has a video on it. It's just criminals are not nearly as good. Nobody's as good of a liar as they think they are. If somebody's really trying to figure out their lying, they're going to get caught.
Officer, this woman shoved my knife blade into her chest and attempted to steal it. I want to file charges. I didn't punch him. He slammed his face into my fist. I was just standing here like
far
this.
From real stories I've heard, to be honest.
All right, guys, we're going to jump out of here. I tried to cut you off, but I have some stuff that I have to finish today, and probably could talk about cop stuff all day long. Maybe we'll dedicate an episode to it here coming up and see if we can get some good question and answers. Jay says, I know how it works. I read Edge of Valor. True. Very true. If you haven't, you should. Thank you, everybody, for coming and hanging out with us today. I really appreciate it, as always. If you're listening on the audio version of the show and you want to come hang out with us live, do so. YouTube.com/Keystroke Medium. We're the only ones there. You can hit subscribe if you want to. If you're watching this video right now, hit the like button. Like, you've been here for an hour. Hit the like button right now. That's an order. And if you don't hit the like button, you can't come back and watch Netflix video. There. I said what I said.
Did say, and I was responding in the live chat when you finish up. So
Scott says, when it comes to investigations, is it paper, rock, scissors for bad cop?
Rock, paper, blaster.
Yes, rock, paper, blaster.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what we're going to do next week, but we're going to do something fun. We're obviously, or maybe not. Maybe we don't have anything.
Next time we'll share the secrets of the universe and the way you too can become instantly wealthy from doing this one simple thing.
And then never talk about the one simple thing. But wait, there's more. All right, we're going to come back next week. We're going to talk about some reading. We're going to talk about some writing and, of course, everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium. See ya.